Chapter 8. The De-Aged Scientist. Following the winding sloped pathway, the two Hylians, one in a newly dyed nightshade tunic, walked up the mountain upon which Hateno village had been built. The higher they climbed, the fewer houses they passed until there were none at all. Only windmills and fenced-off pastures, but soon those vanished as well. All they could see as they walked up the pathway were trees and the occasional large lantern, with flames cool in color, yet they burned hotter than any regular fire could.
A blue flame. She's managed to keep them lit for over 100 years. That's incredibly impressive.
She kind of kept them lit. Most of the lanterns actually went out, and I ended up having to relight them.
Was it difficult? You make it sound as though it were.
There were a lot of lanterns. A lot of them. She didn't tell me how far I'd need to go to get the flame. So the wind would keep blowing my torch out, or it would begin to rain. It was...
How far did you have to walk?
Far.
To her surprise, Link stopped in his tracks. Curious, she watched as he stepped to the edge of the path and looked out over the fields below and the surrounding mountains before pointing toward the mountain range in the distance. She stepped over to stand beside him and looked toward where he was pointing. Past ravines, grassy hills, and multiple pastures was an unusual rock formation sheltering a massive blue flame. The large bulbous furnace looked completely different from any of the architecture found in Hateno.
That must be a Sheikah furnace. The flame they create gives power to many of the ancient devices. Wait. You carried that flame from there all the way up here?
Through town, and further up.
Further up?
She looked up at the mountain they were climbing.
Oh my, I can see how that'd be quite difficult.
Just a bit. But I'm glad I was able to help her out.
Gesturing toward the path, he and Zelda continued their trek.
That's quite surprising. It's hard to believe Purah would neglect such an important power source.
She usually wouldn't, but she isn't really able to handle such tasks at the moment.
And why is that?
Before Link could answer, another voice called to him.
Well, look who it is. Good afternoon, Link.
Link and Zelda looked up the path to see a fellow Hylian sitting on a stool in front of a tree directly beside one of the large blue-flamed lanterns lining the pathway. The young woman, who appeared to be doing nothing in particular on her stool, wore an everyday Hateno-style dress and a smile that radiated happiness and contentment. Her thick dark hair was tied into a bun with a few wispy bangs covering her forehead. As they approached her, Link smiled.
Ralera, good afternoon.
It's good to see you. Who might this be?
Ah, right. Ralera, this is... Marin.
He gestured to the golden-haired Hylian beside him, who clasped her hands in front of her and slightly bowed.
Good afternoon. I'm living here in Hateno with Link.
Living with Link, you say?
Her already bright smile glowed brighter.
Do we have another recently wed couple with us now?
Recently wed?
Though Zelda was taken aback by the sudden question, Link simply shook his head.
No, we don't. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I think you're still the only recently wed woman here.
Oh, that's a shame. You two already look close.
The ex-princess blushed as she continued.
Maybe we'll have a wedding before you realize it. Oh, it's a wonderful thing getting married. Though I will say the journey to marriage is also a very special time. Make sure you cherish it.
Were you recently married?
While Link didn't show it, he couldn't help but feel quite surprised to hear Zelda ask such a personal question, even with Ralera's prodding. Had she always found interest in these things?
I was married a little under a year ago. I moved from my hometown near the shore to be with him. My dear Rhodes.
Rhodes?
The woman nodded and pointed down the mountain. Turning, Zelda noticed the giant windmills they had passed earlier, their blades slowly spinning in the light breeze.
He's in charge of his family's windmills here in Hateno. I help keep watch over them to ensure they're spinning at proper speeds. Hence the stool.
I see. It seems his duties are rather important here in Hateno, aren't they?
They sure are. He's a hard worker and takes pride in it. He can get fairly particular about how the job is done, though. I'm more of a freewheeling girl myself, but it's a pleasant job overall. I'm glad I moved.
Do you miss your hometown?
I do. I hope my father is doing well without me, and he's still healthy enough to go raft fishing along the shoreline. But I also love this town here. The breeze is different. It isn't as salty as my hometown, but I love how peaceful it is. Just sitting here, watching over these buildings and windmills. Where are you from?
Somewhere far away. A place that no longer exists.
I see. Well, I think you'll enjoy it here too.
Thank you. I believe I will, and your words only make that more apparent.
Come on. We should keep going. The sun will be setting soon.
Are you off to see old Lady Purah? Is she still alive up there? I hear she hasn't been seen in almost a year. She could become a legend soon if she doesn't show herself. If I hadn't seen that little girl walking around, I wouldn't have believed anyone lived up there in that strange tower.
I promise you, she's still alive and kicking.
Zelda gave him a strange look.
Purah hasn't been seen? That doesn't sound like her.
No, see, look, remember how I said you'd be dreaming if you saw...
Suddenly, he paused. After staring at her blankly for a moment, he blinked before averting his eyes.
You know what? You'll see.
I'll see. What's that supposed to mean? Link, what happened to Purah?
Do you know old Lady Purah?
Yes, you could say we're old friends. Link, is Purah all right?
I'm telling you, she's fine. You will see when you get up there. I promise, okay?
Zelda stared into his azure eyes, attempting to decipher what he wasn't telling her. Unfortunately for her, she had to accept that she needed to be patient. He was far too gifted at concealing his true emotions when he wanted to. Frustrated, she furrowed her brow and crossed her arms.
It's hard not to worry when you phrase it like that.
But you're not worried about her specifically now, right?
Reluctantly, Zelda nodded.
No, I guess I'm not. Now I'm more worried about what she did, knowing her. Shall we be off then?
With a nod of his own, she and Link began to follow the path again, but a few steps into their journey, Zelda stopped before looking back at the newlywed on her stool.
Wait, are you staying out here? Won't it be getting cold soon?
Ralera shook her head.
I don't have much longer in my shift, but even if it does get cold, I'll be quite warm thanks to this strange blue lantern here. My wonderful husband said this blue fire is a staple of Hateno Village. I can see why now. They're very pretty.
I see. I hope to see you in good health again.
You as well. Have a good evening.
Ralera waved in goodbye, and with that, the two properly began heading up the mountain path.
See? It looks like you did a lot of good reigniting those lanterns. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I guess so.
They traveled up the mountain until they eventually reached the summit, where Zelda looked in awe at the old building they approached. It was similar to the ones in the village below. Like those houses, it had a base of stone brick, tan plaster starting to peel, a chimney, and red shingles covering the roof. Unlike the other houses, this one had a very tall, circular tower stretching from the roof. While this alone would have been enough to set the building apart from the rest, along with being situated so high up on the mountain, There were also unique makeshift additions crudely built with wood, clashing with the tan plaster finish. The main room had clearly been extended, and the entrance now possessed 2 blue doors painted with a large white eye and teardrop insignia in the center. A wooden staircase spiraled around the tower to the top, where a large, multi-legged machine was perched near a somewhat goofy-looking telescope protruding from the roof. Zelda easily concluded this to be the home of her former research partner, which brought a smile to her face. As the two approached the door, Link held out a hand to pause Zelda in her steps.
I need you to wait here for a second.
This prompted Zelda to give him a concerned look.
And why is that? Link, you're making me nervous. Are you sure everything is all right?
I told you, everything is fine. It's just... look, just wait here, okay? I promise it'll make a little sense. Just give me a second, alright?
Zelda furrowed her brow, again trying to read Link's hidden emotions behind his irises. Finally, she nodded in agreement.
Fine then. I'll wait here, but she'd better be all right.
Trust me, she is.
That smile just reminds me of the dye shop earlier.
With only a chuckle in response, Link opened one of the blue doors to the home, just far enough for him to enter without allowing Zelda to see the interior, and closed the door behind him. Zelda waited outside alone, eager for the moment she, too, would be allowed inside. Placing her hands behind her, she turned her head, glancing down at the ocean and beaches below the mountain. They looked beautiful as the early evening sunlight glistened off the waves. It was peaceful, a peace Zelda hadn't experienced in some time. Only a sudden crash inside the house could break that peace. Wide-eyed and confused, Zelda's attention returned to the door as more crashing, clunking, and thumping that sounded like running footsteps continued. What surprised her the most were the muffled sounds of a little girl yelling from inside.
A little girl? Didn't the woman from before say something about a little girl?
Before her thought could finish, the door opened to reveal Link's face once more. With that same tiny smile, he pushed the door open completely while stepping aside, gesturing for Zelda to enter. Still giving him a cautious look, she stepped past him before eyeing the interior, which made her mumble a quiet, "Oh my," the moment she did. The interior was a disorganized tragedy. The main room was open and spacious, and some of the original walls were clearly removed. Paper was scattered across the floors and furniture. Multiple shelves, drawers, and dressers lined the walls, along with various differently sized desks. Most of the shelves were filled with innumerable books, with even more in piles stacked in front of them. Ancient tech parts hung from the ceiling, part of the many abandoned or discarded contraptions and creations now long forgotten. Most of the devices appeared to be unfinished, with only one that looked fully operational, a large blue stone hanging from the ceiling. It was poised above a small terminal, a device Zelda recognized as a guidance stone. Only after taking it all in did Zelda finally notice the large table in the center of the room, and the little girl standing on a stool next to it, seemingly absorbed in some papers spread before her. Confused, Zelda looked around the room again, this time noticing a tall man standing in the back, where things seemed noticeably more clean and organized, who was also absorbed in whatever book he was reading. Still, Zelda could not spot the person she was looking for.
Link, I don't understand. Where's Purah?
Yeah, about that. I'm not actually sure. I came in, and these two were here, but no Purah. Old researcher must have gotten lost somewhere.
Got lost? What do you mean she got lost? You speak as though she's gone senile.
It's fine, Zelda.
Zelda furrowed her brow. He seemed far more relaxed than he should have been. In fact, he looked more amused than anything. Before she could comment on that, he continued.
Look, we'll find her. Why don't we ask the little girl? I'm sure she'll know where to start looking.
Link, what is this? What are you doing? What sort of joke is this?
I never said this was a joke.
The ex-princess narrowed her eyes.
What's going on?
Link simply gestured toward the little girl standing across the room. Realizing she wasn't going to get an answer, she exhaled in frustration before deciding to play along. She walked over to the table, where the little girl hadn't paid her any mind, which she found odd. The small girl could have been no older than 6. Her small, poofy dress was styled similarly to that of the Sheikah she'd met in Kakariko, though hers seemed to be a bit more creative, having added red patterns alongside the collar. Upon closer inspection, it was clear that this girl was a Sheikah herself, sporting the trademark silvery white hair of her tribe. She wore a large backpack with a flute on the side, red eyeshadow that seemed unfitting for a child, and a pair of large red speckled glasses that looked strangely familiar. Though Zelda had stopped next to the girl's stool, no attention was given to her presence. Confused, she glanced back at Link, who simply made the same shooing motion he had given her at the dye shop earlier, before speaking to the little girl.
Hello there, little one. Did Link happen to tell you who I am?
He may have mentioned it.
The little girl had replied without looking up from her papers. Zelda was surprised by the young girl's professional level of speech. Now that she was thinking about it, the young girl did look a lot like the researcher she was trying to find.
Okay, well, I'm an old friend of your...
Are you looking for the director?
The little girl still refused to look up from her papers.
I am. Would you happen to know where she is?
I wonder about that. Why don't you ask that man in the corner? I believe he might be able to point you in the right direction.
What? Are you telling me you don't know either?
I see.
The little girl mumbled, still looking down at her paper. Suddenly, she straightened herself, pulling out a quill and notepad from her deep pockets. As she began to scribble, she continued her mumbling.
Princess, after being freed, can't follow simple directions.
Excuse me.
Zelda balked at her rudeness, but before she could say anything more, the girl closed her notepad and pointed her quill toward her nose.
I gave you an answer, yes? I told you that in order to find the director, you might gain clues by asking the man in the corner there. Deductive reasoning should have told you that maybe I instructed you to go there for a reason. Wouldn't you say?
As much as Zelda wanted to scold the child for being so bold to her elder, the little girl's radiating confidence shut her down. It was honestly quite impressive that a girl her age could exhibit such control over a situation. Whoever she was, it was clear that Purah's intelligence ran through her veins.
Do I need to go over the instructions again?
No, I do believe I understand.
Good. Then if you'll excuse me, I believe I have research to attend to.
All right, then.
The little girl turned back to the table. Confused, Zelda glanced back at Link, who she found holding in a chuckle. Unamused by his fun, she glared at him before moving to the more organized back corner of the room, where the tall man stood facing a neat bookshelf with his own book open in his hands. The moment she stopped before him, he immediately glanced over before turning to face her entirely, something Zelda appreciated. He too was a Sheikah, an older man with rectangular spectacles, silvery white hair tied into a bun, and attire that matched those in Kakariko exactly.
Hello there. Princess Zelda, I presume?
Yes, though I'm not going by that title at present.
I see. Regardless, it's not every day one meets someone of royal blood, especially in this era. The fact you stand before me today is nothing short of a blessing.
Placing his hand on his heart, he gave a light bow.
My name is Symin, an underling of Director Purah's. I assume that's who you're looking for, yes?
Yes, it is. Please, if you could tell me where she is, that would be wonderful. I've been on edge for some time now.
Symin sighed. Closing his book with a thud, he placed it under his arm and turned to the open room.
All right, you two. I believe this has gone on long enough. Princess, the quarry you're searching for is right in front of us.
Zelda blinked. Confused, she turned and looked back at the room, only to find the little girl had turned her attention away from her papers and looked toward them. Scrunching her brow, Zelda slowly shook her head.
I apologize, but I don't understand. I only see this little girl.
Check it!
She gave a little hop before posing, bringing her little hands up to each side of her large head while forming peace signs and winking. She stood in that pose briefly as Zelda stared at her. Hearing Link snort in amusement, the ex-princess turned back to Symin.
What am I not understanding here? I asked where Purah was, and yet I keep being told to talk to that child. Is she her daughter? Her granddaughter, perhaps?
Director, please. She's had enough. Would you give her a proper explanation?
Fine.
The little girl frowned and placed her hands on her hips.
You two are no fun. Linky was far more amusing to watch when he was putting it together. Hello, Princess. It's good to see you again.
Zelda furrowed her brow, looking between Symin, Link, and the little girl before finally coming to what she thought must be the wrong conclusion.
Purah! Is that you?
It sure is! Snappity snap!
Zelda stared at the girl in disbelief.
I'm sorry, but I still don't quite understand.
Ugh, maybe you aren't the princess after all. I expected to have to explain it to Linky over there, but I thought you would come to a logical conclusion the moment you had the necessary clues.
The logical conclusion. I'm sorry, but when I look at you while being told you're Purah, it's quite hard to believe, especially having met Impa already.
At this, the little girl pulled her notebook out again.
After being freed, Princess seems to have lost interest in scientific breakthroughs.
I do think my interest in research and this situation are two entirely different.
Purah snapped her notes closed.
I'm like this because of a failed experiment, obviously. Failed in one way, successful in another. The idea was successfully executed, but the parameters to how effective it was supposed to be were not.
But what kind of experiment could have caused this?
A de-aging experiment? One that would create a rune to keep a person young. I would say that's all you need to know, but someone here decided to read my diary, something I specifically requested he refrain from reading.
Aggrieved, the little girl glared at the knight standing near the front door. Meeting her eyes, he simply looked away.
Ah, so he has a habit of reading others' personal writings.
Oh, so he read yours too? Very bold of him.
I'd agree. Moving past his questionable actions, though, can you tell me more about this?
She took a seat at the table.
I know you and Impa have gotten older in the time that I've been away, but I didn't take you as someone who cared about your looks. At least not so much as to try de-aging yourself.
And you'd be right. After a certain age, one does stop caring about one's looks. Nope, my research on this specific subject actually started when preparing for the calamity. The idea, albeit somewhat cruel, was to recruit retired knights by reversing their age to have a stronger army.
Recruit retired knights? Purah.
I know what you're about to say, and honestly, I agree. But with a foe as dangerous as the Calamity Ganon, it wasn't so unreasonable to consider, whether we morally approved of it or not. In the end, my research didn't make it in time, so it's a moot point anyway.
Still, why did you continue after?
In case the Calamity ever were to return before Linky over there finally finished his beauty sleep. And I do mean beauty. In fact, it seems you managed the same feat. Just like him, you don't look a day over 17. You look just as I remember.
Jumping from her stool, Purah's little legs carried her to Zelda's chair, where she circled the golden-haired girl, momentarily lost in thought. Having taken out her notebook, she spun the quill between her small fingers as she eyed Zelda's features before carefully examining her clothing.
Did you get your old traveling gear from my sister?
Yes? May I ask why?
Do they fit? Just as before?
They do.
I see.
She walked back to her stool, pushed it close to Zelda's chair, and hopped back onto it. Raising her quill, she had Zelda follow it with her eyes, then prodded her skin before finally checking her hair length. Finishing her quick inspection, she began scratching away on her notepad.
After a century of using powers, Princess looks exactly the same. The only explanation possible is your sealing powers. They must have kept you in perfect health while keeping the calamity at bay. Very interesting. We'll have to run some tests on those powers of yours at some point.
Tests? On my powers?
Purah hopped and posed again, pointing her quill at Zelda's nose.
Snippity snap! That's exactly what I said. It's possible your powers have some age-pausing effects. Link didn't age due to the constant healing of the Shrine of Resurrection. Do your powers work the same, or do they have some effect on time?
Time? Do you really believe time has anything to do with my powers?
It's possible. Your powers are believed to have derived from the goddess herself, seeing as you have her blood. Honestly, it's fair to say your abilities are far more versatile than simply being able to seal the calamity.
Now that you mention it, it felt odd while in that tower with the calamity. It felt like I was keeping it inside something. A strange place, but I can't exactly explain it. What I do know is it feels like 100 years have passed, and yet it also feels like everything only happened a few days ago. I'm sorry, I guess that isn't much to go on, is it?
That's more to go off of than I expected, actually. Unfortunately, that's not enough to come to proper conclusions with. We'd need more.
And I wish I could get you that, but...
Zelda frowned and looked down at her knees. Noticing her change in tone, Link left his spot at the front door to stand behind Zelda's chair.
I don't feel my power anymore.
You don't feel it anymore?
Not at all.
After staring at her for a moment, Purah nodded before scratching more down into her notepad.
Well, that limits a lot of our testing ability, but...
Her words stopped the moment she caught Link's eyes. They weren't angry or annoyed, but they did let Purah know exactly what he was silently saying. At this, she huffed before continuing.
Well, I suppose we can put it off for now, which brings me to my next question.
Closing her notebook, she reached out with the end of her quill, placing it under Zelda's chin, a sign for her to lift her face.
What happened at the castle?
At this, Symin stepped a little closer, clearly wishing to hear whatever answer they gave.
What exactly happened when you two faced Calamity Ganon a few days ago? The air was too thick with malice to see the battle clearly through my telescope. Please explain all you experienced, as painful as it may be.
At the question, Zelda looked up at Link, who gave a simple nod. Listening to Purah's request, they explained everything that had happened at the castle, from the appearance of the castle-sized boar, the use of the mythical bow, and finally, Zelda's seal. Though this was all the little researcher had asked for, they did go on to tell of their worries regarding the monsters still scattered around, alive after the sealing of Calamity Ganon. Shockingly, Purah hadn't written down a single word in her notepad, choosing instead to give their explanation every ounce of her attention. By the end, she simply hummed in thought.
Interesting, very interesting.
She tapped her quill against her cheek with her eyes glazed over.
Calamity sealed, monsters still in Hyrule. Well, it was a stretch to believe everything would simply be solved the moment we succeeded in the sealing. Wouldn't you agree? The most important question...
She again pointed her quill, this time waving its end between the knight and the ex-princess.
Isn't why monsters are still here, but how we're gonna go about finding the answer.
Director Purah, if I may. I know you wish to learn more, as do I. But these two just returned from an incomprehensibly strenuous task, and that's putting it lightly. Don't you believe we should give them a choice before simply piling more responsibility on them?
We don't need to give them a choice. I know these two and I know them well. This one
She pointed her quill at Link.
won't lay that sword down until he knows everyone is safe. He'll travel across these lands 100 times over, even if one monster remains, and this one
The quill dropped down to Zelda.
will never allow her knight to do all the work, regardless of whether she has her powers or not. She'll follow right behind him, even taking the lead until she gets in over her head. Does that sound like an accurate description, you two?
I wouldn't say I get that in over my head.
They already plan to try and figure out what's going on, but before we get to that, Princess, what's your plan?
My plan?
I caught what you said to Symin earlier. My hearing is much better in this body. I can come to the logical conclusion that you and my sister have already discussed your place in this new era. If you aren't going by your title anymore, then that means you aren't retaking the throne, correct?
Yes, you are correct. At least for right now. I'm not taking my title or the throne. Not until the time is right, whenever that may be.
Alrighty then, sounds good to me.
That's it. That's your response.
It sure is. There isn't a kingdom anymore, so what you choose to do is completely your choice. I won't pressure you to take a throne you don't desire to sit on. But
With a grin, she slapped her quill onto the front of her notepad.
I'll be ready to stand by your side the moment you are ready. That also means you're required to pay for my services when needed.
Why, thank you, Purah. It's nice to know I still have you and Impa after. Hold on a moment. What was that last part?
The part about always being there to support you?
The part about payment.
Ah, yes, well, you see, after the kingdom got destroyed, funding has been non-existent. I've been using my own funds, and they have all been depleted. So, if you're parading around as a normal girl now, there shouldn't be any issue charging you the way I do others for ancient tech research.
Well, that makes sense, but that means...
It's fine. I've got it. Now's a good time to bring this up, actually.
Reaching down, he took the ancient slate off his hip and held it out to the little girl.
Do you think you could look at this and make sure two people can teleport at the same time? I want to make sure it's safe before just trying it.
Purah hummed, taking the slate into her little hands.
Awfully rare to see you take such precaution. You always get a little overprotective when she's with you.
She looked the slate up and down before tapping the screen to slide her finger through its contents.
I don't think this counts as overprotective.
For you, it certainly does.
The little girl smiled before holding the slate out to her assistant.
Symin! Take this and run some diagnostics at the guidance stone, please. We're looking for its limitations on mass transportation. Thank you.
Do you think it'll be able to transport us both?
Linky, do you carry items in your back pouches beyond using the Sheikah slate?
A few things. Whatever fits back there, really.
Those are separate objects to Linky, but they get teleported along with him. Most likely because they make contact with him, the person the slate recognizes as needing to be moved. I believe it's not a matter of how many individuals are being moved, but rather how much mass is being transported. We'll run some tests and get you an answer in a snap. Or rather, after a few days of testing, just in case. But still a snap compared to how tests were run 100 years ago. Linky, give me a good snap.
Snap.
While Zelda giggled at his snap, Purah frowned.
Man, Linky, you were way more fun when you didn't have your memories. That was nothing compared to the loud snap you gave me when you first arrived. Now that was a snap.
Is she saying you can do better?
The ex-princess swore she saw a hint of red on his cheeks.
I'd rather not do it that way.
Oh, but I'd quite like to see it. It seems like you had a lot more fun last time. Is it because I'm here?
He finds it embarrassing. Something I all but sympathize with. Come on, Linky, give us your best snap. Do it.
Director, the diagnostics are almost complete.
Everyone turned to see Symin standing in front of the guidance stone inside the tower walls.
A snappy response.
Link sighed in relief as the little girl had apparently forgotten her demand for Link to give her a more enthusiastic snap.
Do you mind if I go have a look?
When Purah shooed her away, the ex-princess stood and hurried over to stand next to Symin, who eagerly began explaining the guidance stone properties to her.
That'll be 50 rupees, by the way.
Purah held out a hand to Link as she watched Zelda and Symin discuss.
Can't get anything past you. That seems a bit cheaper than usual, though.
He reached back into his pouches before holding out a few rupees. The little girl squirreled the rupees away the moment they were placed in her palm.
Consider it a congratulations for defeating the Calamity. She's going to want to go with you, you know.
What do you mean?
Though Link was watching Zelda's excitement grow the more she learned about the guidance stone, his ears were focused on the little girl's words.
I mean, I saw your face when I brought up you two coming up with a plan to learn why monsters are still in Hyrule.
I made a face?
I'm just as surprised as you are. Usually nothing breaks that stoic look of yours. But that little frown you gave was enough for this old lady to piece it together. She's going to want to go with you.
I can't take her, Purah. This isn't like those times 100 years ago. It's more dangerous out there. Silver and gold monsters, the Guardians, and especially the Yiga.
She's not going to accept that, and you know she won't. What do you plan to do? Simply leave her behind without a word? Don't you realize what that would do to her?
Confused, Link glanced down at the little girl, meeting her eyes. Realizing he was asking a silent question, she sighed before looking back at the ex-princess.
She looks to you for support. My sister and I may still be around, along with Robbie and Akala, but we're old now. We live here, in this era. She's still from a time before, and while your memory loss has made you part of this era as well, you are the closest thing she has to home. And even if you weren't, you're the closest person to her. Even 100 years ago, you were special to her. You have been, and still are.
Link exhaled in frustration, his frown deepening.
You know that's a correct statement.
I don't know exactly how she feels about me. I used to be her knight, and I know I'm the closest friend she has.
Is it not the same for you? Isn't she your closest friend as well? You sure did care a lot about her, especially when you heard that song a few months ago, The Princess's Love for Her Fallen Knight.
We don't know what that song means.
But you want to know? You can't tell me you don't, not after you snapped your way into this lab demanding answers. That was only a few days after you reunited with that sword, wasn't it? The day it showed you something?
Link reluctantly nodded.
You heard the song before, assuming it meant friendship, but once you saw whatever it was the sword showed, you questioned everything.
The little girl glanced over at him, watching as he looked back at the purple-winged sword on his back before continuing.
Even if it does simply mean friendship, the song and the sword should be enough to tell you just how close of a friend you are to her. And if it means more, well...
She grinned before jerking her head back to the girl in the tower.
You leaving would just make it so much worse now, wouldn't it? It's only the logical conclusion.
Link stood silently for a moment, watching as Symin spoke to Zelda.
I don't want to assume wrong about that song, about how she feels. She used to be the Princess of Hyrule. Assuming she has or even had... It just feels wrong.
And the best conclusion you came to regarding figuring out correctly and keeping her happy in this new era was just to leave her here? That wouldn't be the conclusion I would come to.
I don't want her to get hurt or worse. What other solutions do I have? What would you come up with?
You're the solution, Linky.
Purah turned her entire body toward Link, giving him a firm but warm look.
Take care of her. How you do that is up to you in the end, but I don't think you can do that by just leaving her. You're smart, when you want to be. I wholeheartedly believe you can come up with something.
Link matched her gaze before eventually averting his eyes, silently admitting defeat.
I'm not saying you're acting irrationally. It is dangerous, far more dangerous than it was 100 years ago. But just like you, she needs to learn how to live in this world. You can't baby her. She has to learn.
I know. I understand.
Good. Hey, snap that mood back up. I told you, my solution to the problem is you. And my solutions are almost always correct.
Almost.
Unfortunately, I can't say they always work out well in this body, though this is still technically a success.
Yeah, I guess so.
He watched as Zelda and Symin hurried back over to show them the results of the diagnostic. While Zelda excitedly explained what the slate was theoretically capable of, Link couldn't help but hear the echo of the song he had heard all those months ago, the lyrics playing in the back of his mind. A princess's love for her fallen knight. As the sun began to set, the soft glow of twilight bathed the mountain range in tranquil radiance once more. To Link's surprise, the little director had allowed him and Zelda to stay for hours on end, filled with non-stop discussion about the Sheikah Slate's teleportation potential. It seemed as though Zelda and Symin had enough energy to talk all night about the potential of the Sheikah technology and how much there was yet to be discovered. For a moment, Link wondered if he would need to mentally prepare himself to spend the night in one of the chairs at the lab's tables until Purah finally seemed to reach her social limit.
Alrighty.
The little girl snapped suddenly, cutting off a rambling conversation between Zelda and Symin. With the slate in Zelda's hands, both looked up and turned toward the little girl, who was now standing on the table where Link was sitting.
With the sun having finally set, I believe it's time I tried to get some actual work done.
What do you mean we have been?
Talking our ears off about the slate's potential? Forgive me, Zelda, but while this is a newfound freedom of yours, I've been doing this for over 100 years now. I know the slate's potential is practically limitless, and Symin here knows as well. He just likes having an attentive ear for his ramblings, even though he has his own project he's supposed to be working on. Isn't that right, Symin?
Well, Miss Director.
It's late. I've got things to do beyond ensuring the Sheikah Slate can teleport the both of you at the same time. Go home, and I'll give you a snappy update the moment I confirm the teleportation safe capacity limit. Now, shoo!
But Purah!
I said shoo! Symin! Wipe that frown off your face. Linky, get up and get your princess out of here. Go on, shoo! Shoo!
Alright. We're going.
We really have to leave.
I'm afraid to see what happens if we don't. She may start charging us by the hour if we don't.
I do need the rupees.
Look, she's already getting ideas. Come on, it is getting late. I think we should head home.
Though she was still frowning, Zelda looked back at the small researcher before nodding in understanding. Bringing her hands together in front of her, she bowed slightly.
Thank you for having me, Purah, and for all you've done over this past century. You've been keeping busy watching over Hyrule and waiting for Link to awaken. Even after all this time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The little girl nodded as she took her red glasses off before dropping her goggles down from her white-haired bun. At this, Zelda smiled before noticing Link had opened the door for her. She stepped outside, with Link ready to follow her, only for him to pause at Purah's voice.
Linky, remember what we talked about? She's gotta learn.
Link stopped for a moment, only moving when Zelda called his name from outside. Looking out at her, catching her curious eyes, he looked back into the room and gave a single nod as if the little researcher would somehow know he responded before exiting and closing the door behind him with a click. The moment they began to walk down the mountain path, Zelda began to speak.
What was that about? Did she say something else?
She just wanted to make sure I'd remember to come and pick the slate back up.
Well, I doubt you'd forget something so important. Especially considering you've been using it every day since your awakening. Still, that was quite strange of her. She's never thrown me out in such a manner before. Do you think she got upset that I criticized Symin's workspace? It just seemed so unfair that the chalk lines on the floor kept getting redrawn to give Purah more room. He barely has a corner.
I think she's following her own advice. You aren't a princess anymore, so she's gonna kick you out when she has things to do, the same way she'd kick others out. I'm honestly surprised she let us stay as long as we did before getting the boot.
She did have a habit of kicking people out of her workspace in the castle back then. Does that mean she was just being courteous? I always thought she treated me at least somewhat the same way.
If she had treated you any more relaxed than she had, she might have gotten in trouble. At least from what I remember.
I suppose you're right. Still, shooing us felt like a bit much.
You gotta remember, there's an old lady inside that little girl's body.
That's true. It truly was quite a shock seeing her in such a state. I was sure she'd look exactly like Impa. So, Link, what's the plan?
The plan?
Zelda nodded, placing her hands behind her back.
Well, Purah was correct to say she knew us well. You won't stop until all the monsters in Hyrule are cleared out. And I certainly won't let you go alone. It's imperative we discover why they're still here, and if there's simply a lingering effect of the calamity, or if there's something deeper going on. If my seal wasn't perfect, then it's up to me to figure out how to make it so.
Link didn't immediately answer. He continued walking in silence, his stoic face unreadable to all who weren't Zelda.
You're thinking. You don't want me to come along, do you?
It's not that I don't want you to come along. It's just, it's different out there.
Link, you act as though I haven't been out there before, by myself no less. I can handle myself perfectly fine.
Zelda, it's not like before. There aren't just red bokoblins and a few blue ones here or there. They've evolved. Black, silver, gold. One wrong move, and it's over.
All right, I know I'm not an adventurer or knight, but I know what a bokoblin is. I can get away from them easily.
Then what about the moblins, or the Lizalfos, or Lynels? They're evolved too. There's more out there, and that's not even considering the Guardians. It's dangerous.
At the word Guardian, Zelda recoiled slightly and slowly came to a stop on the winding mountain path. Whether it was the idea of the mechanical beasts still roaming around, or the sudden harshness in his words that made her do so, Link wasn't sure. Maybe it was both, but regardless, he instantly felt regret. That wasn't a look he enjoyed seeing on her.
I'm sorry. It's just a lot riskier out there now. I mean it when I say one slip-up could be fatal, and that's not even considering the Yiga clan. You could seriously get hurt out there.
And what about you? What if you get injured by one of those beasts? What if you misstep and things go wrong?
I have a few new tricks up my sleeves that...
And should they fail? I know I may not understand. I know I may be in over my head. But I refuse to let you go out there alone while I sit here and do nothing. I want to help Link, even if I can't access my powers right now. My guilt would be boundless if I stayed.
The now normal girl stepped forward, allowing Link a deeper look into her saddened, almost desperate emerald irises.
I need to learn eventually. While I can't use it, my power is still within me. The same way that sword is still with you. Our work isn't done. And while we may not be princess and knight anymore, I still think of us as a team.
At this, Link's emotionless facade slightly cracked as a tiny, guilty frown formed on his lips.
Besides, you fought the Calamity Ganon head-on, didn't you? If you're there, then I know things will work out. No matter if I get hurt. Injuries happen to normal people, right? I'm normal now, so... The way you said Purah was taking her own advice, we should as well.
Link!
Link! Link!
Link!
Both turned to see a group of smaller individuals running up the path toward them.
Is it true? Is it true?
You lot, what are you all doing up here? Is what true?
That you brought a girl home. Is that her? Is that the girl?
Yeah, this is her. Meet Marin. She'll be staying with me from now on.
At this, the group gave a melodious ooh that made Link's brow furrow and Zelda's cheeks blush.
Can you play with us? Yeah. Can you and Marin play?
It's getting late, and Marin and I are discussing a few important things. I'm sorry, but not today.
Aww.
You always say that now. We want to play with you and Marion.
We'll play another time, I promise.
Link placed his hand on the top of one of the kids' heads.
With Marin moving in, I've got a lot to prepare for her. But that won't take forever. So if you could all wait just a little longer, that would be great. Do you think you could do that?
Though they looked disappointed, they each glanced at one another before nodding, slightly less disheartened.
It won't be too long, I swear. Now you should all get home. The sun's almost set.
Reluctantly, the kids all nodded again before running back down the winding path as fast as their little legs would carry them, all apparently racing to see who could reach the village first. All except one, a little boy with a bowl cut, who stood at Link's side.
What's wrong, Neb? Is there something else you wanted to ask?
It's just, I know you said you were busy, but will you still have time to teach me about weapons? There's still more I want to learn.
I'll make time. Now, go get home before your mother decides to start gossiping about me again. Go on.
With a smile and a nod, the kid ran off down the road, leaving Link and Zelda alone once again. The moment the kids left, Link's smile vanished, knowing well that their uncomfortable conversation wasn't over. But before he could say anything, Zelda had already decided to speak up.
You can teach me.
Link's pointed ears twitched.
What was that?
You can teach me.
Teach you?
Just like that little boy. You can teach me about the monsters, how to use a weapon, how to be a proper traveler, so to speak.
She brought her hands up in front of her chest as she began awkwardly playing with her fingers.
That doesn't seem too far-fetched of an idea, does it?
Link stared at her momentarily, watching as she continued playing with her fingers, suddenly unable to meet his eyes, fearing he would reject her suggestion. Unfortunately for her, the fear within her chest wasn't unreasonable. He did want to reject it, to tell her she had to stay here in order to be safe, at least until he cleared out the most dangerous of monsters. And yet, deep within his own chest, he knew that was wrong. While safe, it would break her to be left behind, leaving him to do all the work. Her heart was simply too large to be alright with such a suggestion. It was one she would never accept, so much so that he knew she'd most likely just follow after him if he tried to leave her behind. Exhaling forcefully, Link stepped off the path and toward the cliffside it followed. Thoughtfully, he gazed out over the village below, watching as the light breeze caused the leaves to dance on their branches and the water to ripple on the river before finally looking over toward the rest of the Necluda mountain ranges. After a few moments, he sighed, placing his hands on his hips.
Zelda, it's tough out there. Even with the Master Sword and all these new tricks, I don't know if I can keep you safe. You getting injured is one thing, but worse could happen. It really isn't like how it was back then. The hordes I face to protect you alone are nothing compared to even the small camps that exist in this era.
Link.
If you're coming, then you'd better be ready to learn a lot.
At this, Zelda's eyes widened.
It's gonna be hard, and you're gonna be sore. Do you think you can handle that?
Yes, of course. I'm ready to learn whatever is required of me.
Hearing this, Link gave a happy, albeit slightly nervous, smile.
Okay then. When do you want to start?
As soon as possible. We could even start tomorrow if that's all right.
Then tomorrow it is.
This clearly brought much pleasure to Zelda, yet she quickly noticed the shift on his face from nervous cheer to a stern frown.
But before anything, I need you to promise me something.
Oh, okay. What is it?
When we're out there, don't do anything too reckless. You're not a princess anymore, meaning you have much more freedom to do as you please. And that's great and all, but just don't do anything beyond your capabilities, okay?
At this, Zelda seemed slightly taken aback, as if that was a request she never expected to hear come out of his mouth, and after a few moments, she began to giggle. Link furrowed his brow.
Hey, I'm serious here.
I know, I know. My apologies, Link. It's just...
It took her a second, but she eventually collected herself by placing a hand on her chest and taking a deep breath. She smiled at him.
I simply find it funny you're making such a request, seeing as you're the most reckless person I've ever met.
Link frowned, though he didn't argue. It wasn't as if she were wrong. Zelda clasped her hands together in front of her and smiled even brighter.
You have my word. I won't do anything too reckless or beyond my capabilities. I understand Hyrule is far more dangerous than before, so I'll do my best to follow your lead.
Upon hearing her promise, Link's small smile returned before nodding in agreement. Seeing eye to eye, the two continued their trek down the mountain as the last bit of light vanished from the land, allowing the darkness of the night to take over. The house across the bridge on the mountainside stood in the darkness of the night, its windows dimly lit by the lanterns illuminating the interior. There were now 2 inhabitants of the house instead of only 1, both having arrived, cooked dinner, and preparing for the inevitable night's rest upon them. While one was inside, preparing herself for bed, the other was outside, standing in front of the wooden stable beside the house, ensuring his horse was comfortable in her stall. He held out an apple to her.
Here you are, girl. Looks like we'll be staying here in the village for some time. I'll make sure to let you walk around the yard tomorrow, alright?
At his suggestion, the horse shook her white mane before leaning down to take the apple into her mouth. Smiling, Link patted her snout before looking over at the empty stall next to Epona's.
I'll have to grab her horse from one of the stables nearby. Maybe I can make a quick journey to Dueling Peak Stable later on.
Internally solidifying his plan, he gave Epona one more rub before moving away from the crudely built stable and toward the house's front door. There he stood quietly, closing his eyes before taking a deep breath.
This is fine. We're just sleeping next to each other, and it's only because there's just one bed. That's it. That's all there is. Focus, Link. Focus.
Nodding as if trying to convince himself of his own thoughts, he reached out and pushed against the door handle, revealing the inside of the house. As he stepped inside, he heard Zelda's voice from the loft above.
Link, is that you?
Yep, it's me.
Good. I thought you were trying to sleep outside again.
I can't say the thought didn't cross my mind. Zelda, are you sure about this?
About what? Sleeping in the same bed? Link, you're thinking far too hard about this. There's only one bed, so this is our best option. I refuse to allow you to sleep outside.
I understand. Just let me know when you're ready.
I already am. I'm waiting for you, actually.
After a few light thuds of her steps against the loft's floorboards, Zelda's figure appeared above, her torso slightly leaning over the wooden railing as she looked down at him.
Are you ready to go to sleep? We do have a long day of training tomorrow.
Yeah, we do.
Taking a much lighter breath, he looked up with as convincing a smile as he could manage before nodding. Slowly, he headed up the stairs, his hand noticeably sweating as he gripped the railing. The moment he reached the top, he looked over to see Zelda standing by the desk, her long golden hair loose and falling down her back. Instead of her newly acquired Hylian tunic, she wore an old shirt with some old trousers, both a little baggy on her. Zelda smiled, looking down at her body.
I found these in the Sheikah's slate. I don't have any of my old nightgowns, so I figured this was the best I could do. I guess I'm wearing normal sleepwear now, wouldn't you say?
Silently, Link stared at her. Even in old, worn-out clothing, she was still as beautiful as ever. In fact, and maybe it was because it was something so different than he was used to, she somehow looked even cuter than that.
Link, is everything all right? I'm sorry, did you need these? Are these what you sleep in?
No, not at all, Zelda.
He quickly corrected himself, realizing he had reverted to his nightly formalities, having been caught off guard by such a sight.
It's fine, really. I usually just sleep in this anyways.
He placed a hand on his chest, referring to the blue champion's tunic he wore, which had a white undershirt visible underneath.
At least, the shirt under it, that is.
Really? We should find you something more comfortable. But that's an issue for another day. Shall we?
Link gave a barely audible hum, his hand still gripping his blue tunic as Zelda turned on her heels, moving to sit on the bed. Sitting down on the edge, she bounced slightly before looking over to see that her housemate hadn't moved.
Well?
Right.
Carefully, he unbuckled the purple-winged sword on his back as he moved across the loft, passing Zelda, still sitting patiently, before resting the sword in a corner between the wall and the nightstand next to the bed. Pulling the rest of his belts off, removing his blue tunic, and yanking off his boots, he looked at Zelda, who happily climbed deeper into the bed. Sitting on one side, she cheerfully patted an open area that was apparently meant to be his spot. With just his trousers and white undershirt on, once again moving carefully, Link approached the bed, prepared to sit.
Oh, Link, wait a moment.
At this, Link immediately and rigidly stood up.
Would you please blow the lantern out? I believe all we need for lighting is the moon. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Walking over to the lantern hanging from a low beam over the loft, he blew it out before returning to the bedside. Once more, Zelda cheerily patted the spot on the bed, and after again mentally preparing himself, Link climbed in next to her.
See? This isn't so bad.
She continued to smile, her hair glistening in the dim rays of moonlight filling the house.
It's just like when we camped out 100 years ago, right?
I guess so.
Apparently happy with his reply, Zelda sank into the sheets, gesturing for Link to do the same. As the two lay side by side, Link could feel his heart beating rapidly against his chest. Zelda, the princess of Hyrule, and he, her appointed knight, were laying dangerously close together in the same bed. He could feel her body heat warming one side of his body more than the other, a thought he couldn't ignore as much as he tried. What threw him off most, however, was just how pleased Zelda looked. It wasn't surprising that she would suggest something like this, even if it were improper, but to have such a big smile about it.
Link, is something wrong?
Of course, he had been staring into her sparkling emerald eyes.
Are you sure you're alright with this?
At this, Zelda smiled even wider.
I am. Honestly, I don't think I've ever felt more comfortable or safe. You have a wonderful house. I'm happy with what you did with the champion's weapons.
Well, I didn't think it'd be right to just keep them in the slate. They should be remembered properly.
Contently, Zelda's eyes closed as she nodded, though her eyelids didn't rise again.
They should. What do you think you'll teach me about first when tomorrow comes?
Well, I had an idea or two on what we could do. We need to check your fitness level. That's the most important thing.
You think so? Not using a sword or something like that?
You can't use a sword properly if you haven't built up the muscles to swing it. Besides, endurance and stamina are more important when you travel the way I do. Zelda?
Looking over, Link found her fast asleep, her face buried in the pillow under their heads.
Was she just trying to make me feel more comfortable by starting a conversation?
Link's body slightly relaxed as he chuckled. Leaning over, he moved to pull the sheets over her shoulder. When she was properly covered, he laid back down, his hands behind his head as he stared at the wooden support beams near the ceiling. After a few moments of thought, he glanced at the sword resting next to the bed, its purple hilt and the gold accents of its sheath luminous in the moonlight.
This is the right choice, isn't it?
The blade didn't respond. It leaned quietly against the nightstand, silent, just as any other sword would. Facing the ceiling again, he took a deep breath before closing his eyes, still whispering to himself.
Well, I guess I just have to see what happens. She asked what I'm going to teach her during tomorrow's lesson. How did I start my adventure?
After a few more moments, a slight grin appeared on his face.
Picking apples.
Thank you all for watching this episode of Couple of the Wild. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you enjoyed hearing the new voices. If you would like to see more content like this, our channel not only will have later episodes of Couple of the Wild, but we also have the series by Dalia Medlini, Dance With Me, and comic dubs by Omnomberries, both Zelda writers and artists respectively, who are amazing, and we are grateful that they are letting us dub their stuff. Those are all also fully voice acted with music and sound effects and everything else under the sun. So if you want to see more content like this, like Dance With Me, like Splendor, so on and so forth, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and we hope to see you guys in not only the next episode, but all episodes going forward. Thank you for being on this channel. We hope to see you guys soon.